The Quotable Machiavelli. 500 years ago, a Florentine diplomat and political thinker wrote a short, dangerous, utterly honest book about power. His name was Niccolò Machiavelli. This is what he taught us. How we live is so far removed from how we ought to live, that he who abandons what is done for what ought to be done will rather bring about his own ruin than his preservation. With those words from The Prince, chapter 15, Machiavelli made his founding departure, not from morality, from illusion. The leader who governs from idealism alone, he argued, will be destroyed by those who do not share it. Effective leadership begins in truth, not aspiration. To understand Machiavelli, you need 3 words: Virtù, Fortuna, and Prudenza. Virtù, not virtue in the moral sense, but energy, ingenuity, and the courage to act decisively. The prince with Virtù shapes his world rather than being shaped by it. Fortuna, fortune. Machiavelli believed she governed roughly half of human affairs. The wise leader builds reserves in calm times, so that when fortune turns, as she always does, she can be withstood. And Prudenza, the master virtue, reading the shifting situation correctly and choosing the best available action. It cannot be learned from formulas. It is built through history, great examples, and hard experience. Fortune is the arbiter of half of our actions, but she still leaves us to direct the other half, or perhaps a little less. Machiavelli's great scholar, Maurizio Viroli, calls this the centerpiece of the entire philosophy. Neither fatalism nor naive optimism. Half is chance. The other half belongs to those who prepare, who act boldly, and who do not confuse waiting with wisdom. Section 2. Force and cunning. The lion and the fox. Machiavelli's most famous metaphor. The prince must be both a lion and a fox. The lion commands through force and the threat of it. Without the lion, the fox is torn apart by wolves who sense weakness. But the fox reads traps, deploys cunning, and appears to be whatever the moment requires. Without the fox, the lion walks straight into snares. The truly great leader knows not just how to be each, but when. And then there is Machiavelli's most quoted and most misquoted passage. Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved. But here is what is almost always left out. He immediately adds, the prince must above all things avoid being hated. Fear is structural. It is maintained by the leader's own power. Love is fickle. It depends on others' goodwill. But cruelty that breeds hatred destroys every leader, without exception. The full argument is, and always was, nuanced. Section 3. Advisors, flatterers, and the 3 kinds of mind that exist in every organization in the world. There is no other way to guard yourself against flattery than by making men understand that telling you the truth will not offend you. The leader, surrounded by people who tell them only what they wish to hear, is already failing. Every other capacity becomes blind without accurate information. And this one. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Your appointments are the most accurate single indicator of your quality to everyone watching. In chapter 22 of The Prince, Machiavelli describes 3 classes of intellect. The first, and most excellent, comprehends by itself. Independent judgment, original insight, rare and worth cultivating at almost any cost. The second appreciates what others comprehend. It can recognize good judgment and defer to it, sufficient for most leadership when combined with the right advisors. The third neither comprehends by itself nor recognizes good judgment in others. He calls it simply useless. And it is the defining failure of mediocre leadership everywhere, in every era. Section 4. Republics, Liberty, and the Cycle of Regimes. The Discourses on Livy, Machiavelli's true masterwork, where the very safety of the country depends upon the resolution to be taken. No considerations of justice or injustice, humanity or cruelty, nor of glory or of shame should be allowed to prevail. The only question is, what course will save the life and liberty of the country? Viroli places this passage at the heart of his case that Machiavelli was a genuine Republican patriot. The criterion is always the health of the Republic, never the advantage of any single person. That is the line between statecraft and tyranny. 3 observations on human nature that have lost nothing in 5 centuries. Men are driven by 2 principal impulses, either by love or by fear. Men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony. And perhaps most bracing of all, a deceitful man will always find plenty who are ready to be deceived. Machiavelli is not celebrating deception. He is observing its structural persistence. Any system that ignores human vulnerability will be outmaneuvered by those who do not. But who was the man behind the philosophy? In December 1513, the very year he composed The Prince, during his exile from Florence, Machiavelli wrote a letter to his friend Virtù. When evening comes, I return home and enter my study. On the threshold, I take off my workday clothes and put on the garments of court and palace. Fitted out appropriately, I step inside the venerable courts of the ancients, where, solicitously received by them, I nourish myself on that food that alone is mine, and for which I was born. That is not the voice of a cynic. That is the voice of a man for whom ideas were a refuge, a vocation, and a love. And this brings us to Maurizio Viroli's great contribution in this anthology. He presents 5 arguments for a different Machiavelli. 1. He was not a Machiavellian. 2. The Discourses is his masterwork, not The Prince. 3. Political realism is itself a form of moral seriousness. 4. He is among the greatest prose stylists of the Renaissance. And 5. Perhaps most relevant to us today, he speaks directly to the problems of democracy. His warnings about flattery, the decay of republics, and the need for civic virtue speak with remarkable force to the pathologies of contemporary political life. 5 centuries on. 10 lessons from one of the most honest minds in the history of political thought. 1. Begin from reality, not aspiration. 2. Prepare for fortune before she strikes. 3. Bold, imperfect action beats cautious paralysis. 4. Cultivate your own independent judgment. 5. Create conditions where people can tell you the truth. 6. Be feared if you must, but never, ever hated. 7. No half measures in conflict. The wounded adversary who survives becomes the implacable one. 8. Material interest is more reliable than sentiment. Design institutions accordingly. 9. The quality of your appointments reveals your quality to the world. And 10. History is the laboratory of political science. Human nature does not change. Study the ancients not for edification, but for pattern recognition. Machiavelli left us one final thought in the Discourses. Whenever men are not obliged to fight from necessity, they fight from ambition, which is so powerful in human breasts that it never leaves them, no matter to what rank they rise. The Quotable Machiavelli, edited by Maurizio Viroli, Princeton University Press. And 500 years after his death, still the most honest book about power ever written. Thank you for watching.